All right, so this is kind of what you can do in a scenario that we just had, in the southern states. Like you're out of power, you have no way to cook food, you're pretty much SOL when it comes to what do I do with food consumption. Because for me, I cook my food in bulk, normally like one or two times a week. But outside of that, like a lot of people hate eating cold chicken. A lot of people hate eating cold grainy rice, right? Um, and when it gets to that point, like it's either do it or find another alternative to keep your food within reasonable limits, right? So like for me, I'm eating 5,500-ish calories a day, and it's hard for me to eat that even on a normal day, or when I have power, and when I have a blender, and when I have water, when I have a stove. It's just hard for me to eat that just in a normal day. So you put the no power aspect into it to where I can't cook my food, I can't heat my food, I can't use a blender if I want to just blend the food up and drink it. It's just what I do a good bit of the time. Honestly, just blend it up and just drink it. If you haven't tried the chicken shake, y'all weren't around. Y'all weren't around for the chicken shake era. That was a couple years ago, but the majority of all of my meals were just plain chicken, plain rice in a blender, add water, blend it until it was pureed. There was like no chunks in it, and I would just drink it. I mean, hell, I've done it the past 2 days just to get the calories back in because I've been so busy trying to keep up with everything, and it's not the best, but it's not as bad as you think. It's just got a very salty taste to it, and it kind of reminds you of like maybe not like chicken soup, but because it is just chicken, rice, and water. But again, it's not something that I'm like eager to eat. Um, anyway, so kind of to give you guys an example of what I've done during this time was so I pretty much sat down. I wrote my macros down. I wrote down what the total caloric intake was for the day, and I'm like, okay, I need to space these meals out over 5 or 6 meals a day, right? So let's just say to make things easy, I had to hit 300 grams of protein, 300 grams of carbs, 100 grams of fat, right? If I was to, divide all that, I'm saying, hey, I'm gonna try to, split this into, 5 meals, right? So each individual meal that would be what 60 protein, 60 carbs, and what 25 fat for each meal, right? Now, granted, this is not something that you should do every single day. It's just like in a oh crap, it's about to hit the fan kind of deal. Like I need to try to, get my food in. So for me, when that happens, I always revert to what's the easiest thing that I can do to get these macros in. So I'm pretty sure that I said 60 protein, 60 carbs, and 20. No, so yeah, it'd be 60 protein, 60 carb, and 20 grams of fat for each meal if I was to split it over 5 meals. And don't, if somebody is watching this later on and they do the math, this is off the top of my head. Um, so in my mind, I'm like, okay, 60 grams of protein. The easiest way to do that, either 2 scoops of whey isolate, 2 cans of tuna. If you have chicken, if you have beef, it's going to be cold, right? In this scenario, but I know that I can get about 50 grams of protein from any of those 3 or 4 sources, right? And I had plenty of protein powder here. I found some cans of tuna at the dollar store, so I was pretty much covered there. And then I'm like, okay, 60-ish grams of carbs in each meal. What can I do there? A bagel has about 50 grams of carbs, right? So again, that's pushing me closer to the goal. Now, keep in mind, I'm about 10 protein away, 10 calories away, or 10 carbs away. But keep in mind that those trace proteins, and those trace carbs and the other food, sources are gonna add up. And so, if you look at it as a whole, we need about 20 grams of fat. So, the bagel has like 2 or 3 grams of fat. Those scoops of protein probably in total has, 2 or 3 grams. So you have about 15-ish grams of fat left. And you could make that up from, almond butter. You can have peanut butter, avocado oil, things like that. And you could very well get by with doing small things like that. It might not be the tastiest, it might not be the most luxurious thing in the world, and it might suck because it's always cold. It's always a cold bagel. It's always a protein shaker. It's always just I hate tuna. So nasty tuna. I used to do tuna and oatmeal shakes too, and I think that's why that I hate tuna so much. I would just, especially when I was in college, I didn't have to have time to go eat all my meals, so I would just go to the dollar store. I kept a can opener in my book bag. I would drain the water out. I had a blender hidden in the teacher's office and I had a thing of oatmeal hid in their office too, and I would just blend up tuna and oatmeal, drink it, and go to class. So I think that's why again I hate tuna now, but it's just to get it down, right? It's just what it boiled down to. Um, so really, I think in scenarios like this, it's really just a matter of how can I simplify this to where I can at least hit my protein intake goal every day, and how can I hit my caloric intake goal every day, and just try to be on point as you can. Right now, all this stuff sounds really good on paper. It does. It sounds like, hey, this would be pretty easy, right? I can just drink 2 scoops of protein, eat a bagel, and eat, 10 grams of almond butter with every meal 5 times a day. And I'll be right on track, right? Well, things doesn't always go to plan. Run out of things. You get tired of eating, this or that. Um, no AC. You just get irritable. Like for me, my calorie consumption was so high. Off the top of my head, it was like 350 something grams of protein, almost 700 grams of carbs, and like 120-ish grams of fat. So I was like trying to divide that out in between like 5 or 6 meals, and I'm just like, I don't have this much protein powder here. I don't have this many bagels here. My appetite's already in the tank from eating all this food on a daily basis. So I was using things like whole milk, which was in the fridge and it was about to go bad. I was really using any and everything at home that I could to try to keep those calories up as high as I could. And granted, I still lost 5 pounds from Friday to Monday because I just couldn't, sustain that caloric intake. So um, at the end of the day, though, I hit the protein goal and I didn't go stupid wild with saying, screw it, let me just, ride up, let me just ride up at Wendy's. Let me grab a double bacon cheeseburger and fries and a frosty, right? And I could have done that. That would have probably, kept my calories up. But again, it would have added on additional fat. In these scenarios, it's always better to just eat a little bit under instead of going over, obviously. But again, this is just that coming out of left field, scenario that none of us is, prepared for, things like that. Now in like an everyday, normal condition, when you have to do stuff like this, such as like if you leave a meal at home, if you drop it at work, if something happens and you left the meal on the counter at work, this is where that you could stop by Chick-fil-A, grab you a grilled chicken sandwich, stop by the gas station, grab you a protein bar, an apple, a banana, something to just keep you within the lines, right? But again, with all the things that transpired this week. I didn't have much planned for today, but I was driving back home from the gym about an hour ago, and I was like, this will be a really good topic to speak about. Even though that Billy's not in this predicament with us, you're lucky. But I'm sure that you guys see a good bit of that stuff, over in Illinois as far as like snow and that kind of stuff too. So, but anyway, that's kind of all I got for you guys today. So, Rian, I'm curious for you, how did you manage to like keep your caloric intake, pretty decent during this whole thing? How did you manage it?
Yeah, it was actually easier than I expected, mainly, but we also have a gas stove. I have a grill outside, I have propane and all that. So we were cooking wasn't the problem. The challenge I ran into was when traveling, because we left town on Saturday and then power came back on Sunday. Um, and like I had my son with me, so stopping for lunch, stopped at like a Zaxby's is what it is, right? Like, and I was way under calories for both Saturday and Sunday. But the amount of salt I think that they put in that stuff, like I'm still working on getting the that flushed out of my system. So um, just it just better than anyone when I start harping on like, oh God, I I've had a misstep. The extra salt gets added right away to my body, so it shows up on the scale. But as far as adherence, it was all right. I mean, because I had the generator running with the freezer, so was able to keep food cold and then just cook up some of the stuff that I had in there. We had to throw out a ton of food, which sucked, but um, yeah, having the gas stove helped a lot.
And that's one thing that people think a bodybuilder, right? Like the grill is what we all use to cook stuff on, right? It's the easiest thing to cook on. I don't have a grill. I'll be the first to tell you I don't have one, mainly because I cook all my chicken. I cook all my beef plain in the oven on the stovetop. The beef at least in like a pot, and then I just season it as I eat it. So for me, I can take two pans, cut my chicken up, throw it in there, throw it in the oven. When I'm done, I just throw that in the dishwasher. Same with the beef. Now, if I had the grill, had to scrape all that stuff off, clean it, put a cover back on it, go get propane, right? So it's just more like I don't really need a grill in the everyday life scenario. But looking back at it now, I'm like, yeah, I might just need to go get one just in case, because I don't have a gas stove either. Um, but it really makes you appreciate the electricity.
Yeah, those little camp stoves with how much y'all are out on the boat too. Just go for a little picnic, have a little mini
Yeah,
camp stove. That'll do the trick. But
yeah, yeah. We're having a generator delivered tomorrow, so hopefully that won't be an issue next time because we had a small, like when I say small, it was like the size of a lunchbox. I mean, it was like this tall. I mean, it was the tiniest generator that anybody could let me borrow, and it was enough to just keep the fridge running and keep the Wi-Fi going. And it was kind of shoddy as it was. So, um, but just kind of it's just the way it is. But
When are you guys going to get power back? Have they told you guys down there, or is it just up in the air?
so I have power. Ren has power. I was like 3.5 days without it. I think Ren was like 2.5, three, somewhere in there. My family back home, they might not have it for a total of like 8 or 9 days. And yeah, there's some. I talked to a guy at the gym today. He said they might not have power until next Tuesday. So yeah, it's rough.
yeah, North it's going to be even worse. That's probably like they have to rebuild everything from scratch because it was wiped out.
Yeah, yeah.
So Austin, so I know you talked about like your dieting, like in situations like this that happen. So again, like you said, we get pretty bad weather up here too, like snowstorms, blizzards, tornadoes, stuff like that. So like, let's say you're used to going to the gym 6, 7 days a week, and something like this happens, and your gym gets cut off. What would be the best alternative then if you're used to doing like that heavy lifting 5 to 6 days a week?
Um, I mean, if you have stuff at home, cool. Utilize it. If not, just consider it as like a deload week. And I'm actually talking about that tomorrow on my Instagram. I got that scheduled to talk about. So, um, pretty much, I mean, like what I did was I still went to the gym that Friday morning. Even though that we lost power, the gym still had power. I still went, but I didn't go Saturday or Sunday. I think in those scenarios, I keep us, in the back of my head, I'm like, okay, I'm not able to get my normal calories in, and I'm about to go to the gym to burn more calories. So for me, I'm like, as long as I stay, somewhat active, still going for walks, getting my steps in. I mean, I'm not gonna put on fat, in that small amount of time, right? So if that happens to you, any of those, natural, natural, disasters or whatever, just get the steps in if you can. And that's where, just sticking in that habit of at least hitting the steps every day. Because truth be told, after my 2 to 3 day hiatus from the gym, when I went back in, I felt great. My nagging injuries were gone. I felt refreshed. I was actually excited to go to the gym for once, in a couple, after a couple of weeks of just like dragging through it. So, in those scenarios, don't stress about it. Just think of it like, okay, I'm just going to take a few days off. It is what it is. Because sure, you could go do push-ups, you could go do pull-ups, you could do whatever, right? But if we're used to lifting, heavy weight at the gym, there's not really much here at your house, especially at my house, that I could replicate to do that, right? I mean,
Gotcha.
even when COVID hit, we before we had access to a gym, I had a buddy who got this long metal pole, brought it from his house, and we were going to just slide, cylinder blocks on the end of the pole and just squat that way. And that didn't work for long. Thankfully, we had a local gym know about us and let us come into the back door kind of thing and work out. But so at that point, just control what you can control and just do what you can. So,
Gotcha. Thank
but
you.
absolutely. But if you guys don't got anything else, we'll wrap it up. So.
All righty. We'll talk later this afternoon, Austin.